Hello and welcome back to Animated Banners with CSS. Now that we've got all of our items within our banner set to a position of absolute, we can now go in and start moving things around a little bit easier. And I want to start with this image of this snowman and the tree. Remember, the snowman and the tree are all part of the same image. And for the very first slide, I want the tree to be there. Now, if you remember, when we first open our page, as we've discussed before, we're not going to have anything in this area. We're going to have the tree animate up and into this area. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and line it up so that the tree is fully visible in our banner. And then later on, once we start animating, we'll move it down where it needs to be and then animate it on. But again, for now, I want to go ahead and move it up. And the easiest way to move this up is to set the bottom property of this image to 0. And if we set the bottom to 0, then it will align the bottom of the image with the bottom of its container, which is the banner itself. So let's jump into our code. And we're now inside the banner 05 folder. So all the changes we make in this lesson will be saved there. And if we go back to banner.html, the snowman image, the image with the snowman and the tree, is this foreground image here, and we gave it a class of img01. So that's the class we're going to be targeting first. So let's go back to banner.css, scroll down here to the bottom, skip a couple lines, and let's create a rule for the class of img01. So remember, this item already has absolute positioning because of this rule up here. Also, I want to go ahead and get rid of the top and left rules here. We don't want everything to be in the top left corner, so I want to get rid of that so that for this particular rule here, all we have is the position and the margin. So let's go ahead and save that, and you'll notice on our page, if we refresh, everything is set in the top left corner anyways by default, so we didn't really need that top left rule, even if we wanted the text up there. But let's get back to our image, the foreground image with our snowman and the tree. And what we want to do here is set the bottom property to 0 pixels. By doing that, let's save our file and refresh. It pulls that image up so that the bottom of the image is flush with the bottom of the banner. Now I want to nudge it over to the right a little bit. I don't want it to be flush to the left. I want to move it over 80 pixels. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to set the left property here to 80 pixels, and we'll save that and refresh, and that moves it over, and that looks pretty good. So once our tree animates on, this is the position it's going to be in. And as I've mentioned before, once we start actually animating it, we'll move this off the stage and then animate it back on. But for now, I just want to make sure we get our positioning right before we do that, because we need to know where this item is going to end up once we do animate it. So that gets our tree in place. Now let's focus on the heading text, which is this first piece of text here. Everything is 30% off. I want to move that over here to the right of the tree on this little blue rectangle that spans the entire width of our banner. And also want to restyle the text a little bit. I want it to be larger, and I want it to be in all caps. So let's jump back into our code and let's make that happen. So down here at the very bottom, I'm going to create a new rule for that heading, and if we go back to our HTML, we can see that our first heading here has a class of txt heading01, and our second one has a class, obviously, of txt-heading02. So let's target this one first. We'll go to banner.css and we'll create a rule for .txt-heading01. So our color has already been set up here in the h3 rule. And since both of these headings, remember, one of these is going to animate off as the other one animates back on, but they're both going to be at the same height. So I'm going to, for this H3 rule here, we're going to give both of these items a top position of 37 pixels. And then we're also going to transform the text for both of these so that it's all in uppercase. So text-transform : space uppercase. And then I want to bring the font size up a little bit. So let's bring our font size up to 50 pixels. So let's save that and see how that looks. We'll go back into our browser here, refresh, and there we go. So it has a top position that gets us vertically centered within this rectangle, and our text is sized up. It's a good size, and everything is now capitalized. Now, as far as the left position of this text, it might be different for the two text fields depending on how much width the other text field takes up. So they might not be aligned to the same left position. So for the left position for this one, we need to make it specific to this particular heading. So we'll go back into our code for this text heading 01 rule that we created a moment ago. And here we'll set the left position to 400 pixels. So let's save that and refresh our page, and that moves it over to a good spot. Next, we're going to take our red text over here that's cluttered in the upper left-hand corner, and we're going to move it down over here and obviously make it quite a bit larger. So let's go back to our code. And again, if we go to banner.html, these two paragraphs that we're pointing at now have a class of txt01 and txt02. Now these other two are going to be sized a little bit differently than these two. So we don't want to apply this next rule to all of our text fields. Instead, we're just going to focus on the first two. So again, txt01 and txt02. We'll go back to banner.css, and we'll go down to the very bottom here, skip a couple lines, and we'll create a rule for both txt01 and .txt02. And for both of those, I just want to set the font size here to 100 pixels. So we'll save that, refresh our page, and that makes our text a lot bigger, and it's going to be a lot easier to read now, obviously. So now we just need to position each one of these individually, and some of this might take some guesswork and some nudging and moving around. So let's walk through what that would look like. For our last text field, we just kind of put everything in place here without showing you my thinking behind it. A lot of this just takes a little bit of trial and error to get everything where you want it. Now you could go to your Photoshop file and just measure everything and put it exactly where it is in the Photoshop file, but I like to work with my browser as a canvas, and I like to experiment within the browser a little bit more than I like to experiment in Photoshop. So I'm going to go back into my code, and we're going to apply some rules for these two items individually. So we'll go ahead and create the rules, txt01, and our opening and closing curly brackets, and then we'll skip a couple lines and put our rule for txt02. And then for 01 and 02, we're going to change the left and top properties. So for the left, let's start with 400 pixels, the same value that we used up here for our heading. And then for our top, let's try putting this at about 100 pixels. So this is just for our first text field. Let's go ahead and just do that one by itself. We'll save that, refresh our browser, and there we go. So I see that I want to move it over to the right a little bit more. So maybe another 50 pixels or so. So we'll jump back into our code, and instead of 400, we'll bring it up to 450, save that and refresh. And that looks a little bit better. So now let's take our sale text and move it down and to the right. So we'll come down here to txt02, and for the left property, I want it to be further to the right than the first one is. So let's set it to 500 pixels for now. We'll probably end up changing it. And then we'll set our top value to, it needs to be lower than this first one. So this needs to be a higher number. So let's set it to 150. I don't think that's going to be enough. Let's actually go up to 200 pixels and see how that works. So we'll save that, refresh our page, and we can immediately see we have some adjusting to do. As far as the left position, I think I want to move it over just a little bit more so that the L in sale is between the T and the R that's hanging down in the winter section. So we'll just nudge it over maybe about 10 pixels, and then we'll decrease the top value there a little bit to move it up. So for the left position here, let's bring it up to 510, and for top, let's try 175. We'll save that and refresh, and that actually gets us almost exactly where I want to be. And I want to bring that winter text down a little bit, just a few pixels. So we'll go back up to txt01, and for the top position here, I'm going to try 110, save that and refresh. And then we'll move sale down a little bit more, which is the second one. So we'll set our top position here. Let's try 180. Save that and refresh. And there we go. So they look good in relation to each other, but now I want to move them both over to the right quite a bit. I want it to be more centered in this wide open area down here. So I'm going to try moving it all over another 50 pixels or so. So let's go back to our code. And for the left position for the first one, we'll increase that by 50. We'll bring that up to 500. And for text 2, we'll bring that from 510 up to 560. So we'll save that and refresh. And there we go, maybe even more than that. So let's try another 50 pixels just to see how it looks. So we'll bring this first one up to 550 and the second one up to 610. Save that and refresh. And there we go. I think that looks good. So that gets everything in place initially. We still need to position our other text fields, which we'll get to in the next video. And then we have some depth issues to deal with because right now our text is on top of our snowflakes. And I actually want this front layer of snowflakes to be in front of the text as well, just to give it that sense of depth that we're going for. So we'll get to all of that starting in the next video. Thank you for watching.